Bogotá is very fortunate in being in one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever been in. And Bogotá itself is a city halfway up a mountain, a very tall mountain, so perched practically on a shelf. It could not be more exciting. It's certainly amongst the most beautiful cities I've ever visited, geographically and in sense also about architecture.
We had the luxury of having a client that was very clear on what his priorities were. His priorities were to create a fantastic public space at the base of the building. He also wanted a good piece of architecture. He is an architect, he trained as an architect and therefore has a passion for architecture. But he never came and said, I want an icon. Actually, quite the reverse, he just said, I want a really good building. If a building becomes an icon, that's a privilege, that's a kind of extra. You know, what we aim to do is produce the best building for the needs of the client, but we also want to produce a building that contributes to the city. We very much believe that buildings have a responsibility to build a city. Each building should try and contribute a space. If in the process the public takes the building to its heart and gives it a name or something, that's a privilege. That's not something you can, I don't think that's something you can set out to do as an objective.
We don't build in an abstract way. We don't do a sketch and then we find the engineers and then we tell the client that that's what he's got. So we know we've got serious seismic problems here. We know we've got even wind problems and so on. So the building is specifically designed so it will withstand those things. Now that allows us to celebrate. We can actually go beyond just functionally putting up very heavy columns. We can use less material by creating diagonals which tie the buildings together and put some of the steel and concrete in tension, but specifically the steel, and that will save in the amount of steel. But also, of course, it gives you a scale. It gives you a scale, a grain, and a more human building. The rooftop, which is broken down into parts, again gives you a more human scale. So you start at the top, and it's really, that's quite a delicate, it's practically a jewel, though we don't look at it as that. That's a functional element, but it does have a scale which is very important. And buildings are all about giving order through scale, through rhythm, through the play of light and shadow, and that has that whole lot.
We think public space is incredibly valuable in Bogotá. There is not a great deal of open space, and the client really wanted us to make a really fantastic open space for the citizens of Bogotá. So we felt what we should try and do is minimize the footprint of the building on the site and really let the public space run into and through the buildings. So that cutback really invites people to engage in the base of the building. It's almost the building is lifted up and the public realm floats around the base. What that incidentally created was something which is very interesting scale-wise. I think you get this fantastic, very human scale spaces at the top and the bottom of the building, but you also, it creates a datum at the base here which pretty much relates to the typical datum for the adjoining areas of Bogotá, which are about 8 stories. So you've almost can describe it as a building, low-rise building, which engages the public. You've then got the business end of the building, as it were, and at the top again it celebrates with a series of terraces, and it is planned that one of those terraces will be a new observatory for the city. So people will have access to the top and the bottom.
There is a connection, but it's a subtle connection between the mountains and the design. You don't go there, I think, and say, we will make a small mountain out of buildings, because they're totally different. It's a dialogue between the architecture, which is the man-made, and nature, and that in itself is very interesting. And we have broken up the building and the skyline specifically, which is what the mountain really affects. It is broken down in such a way, in a sort of circular way, that you don't see it as a lump against the mountain. You see it as a series of roofs, practically of towers and turrets.
I think every project's significant for the office. I mean, we're not a big office, and you know, we're very fortunate to have quite a range of projects in the office. But I think you can't say one project is more significant. Each one is a very personal project to the people involved in it. And one of the great things here is you know, we've had a fantastic team, and the team has really fallen in love with the city and in love with the challenge. And I hope that's reflected in the design, has a sort of joie de vivre about it.
This is a wonderful place with a wonderful client. So, and the more we work with them and the more we work in this place and the sense of place, the more exciting it gets. And that's why we work there. We work all around the world, and this is one of the most exciting jobs we've got in the office.